Speaking of dead fish, look, it's somebody's face. And that is why I love motorcycling. Hey proletariat, Pattern Against User here. Just wanted to do a little quick vlog about why I ride a motorcycle. It's funny, it's something that motorcycle riders have to defend against all the time, against all the cagers who basically think we're taking our life into our own hands for no reason at all. I'm sure whether you ride a motorcycle, or if you're even thinking about riding a motorcycle or talking about motorcycle, you will always run into the argument, and it was most expertly put by one of the guys I work with, who said, I choose to not ride a motorcycle simply because I enjoy having my head attached to my body. And he makes a good point. You know, there is a risk that you take to ride a motorcycle. It's a calculated risk for all of us, and to defend the benefits of risking your life is not easy in many situations. And for a lot of people who commute and have no love of engines or cars or wheels or burning rubber, there's just no reason at all to take any unnecessary risk for locomotion. But for those of us who are gearheads, or bike brains, or whatever you want to call us, riding a motorcycle is worth the risk. And why? This is why we've gathered here today. So for me, I've been thinking, basically, my entire psyche, personhood, could be broken up into three parts. My planner, my regretter, and the small part of me that lives in the moment. All three of these items make up my who I am, but they make up also how I survive, and I think how humanity has been surviving for the last however many millions of years humans have been around, depending on your classification system. But so if we break this down, you probably already got it, but for the purpose of discussion, my planner is the part of me that's always thinking about the future. It's thinking about what I have to do for work, what I have to do for my kids, what my 5-year plan is, and how am I achieving it. And it could also be called my worrier, but I thought I picked a depressive enough title for the other part of me, which is my regretter. And that's the part that's worried about the past and the things I've done, the things I've said, the decisions I've made. And basically 90% of the time my brain bounces between those two kind of egos, my worrier and my regretter. But every once in a while, my brain is able to shut those two parts up, and just for a second, and it's not always explicable, but just for a second, I just breathe and I just experience the moment, and I just live in that moment. I don't really probably have to describe it too well, because I'm sure you all have a similar experience. And I've actually come to the realization that just about any time somebody's trying to get you to do something, might disagree with me on this, but whether it's their religion, their sport, their hobby, their book, their whatever, it's because that item, that part of their life helps them experience and appreciate the moment. And motorcycling isn't the only part of my life that gives me this. Previously, I'm new to motorcycling. I think this is I've almost done two seasons. But what was I talking about? Oh yeah, before that, for me, to give you a little bit of my background, I'm a I'd say I'm a recovering former religious person. Sorry, I had to get that out of my system. This is our new bike path. So shiny. I know I shouldn't be driving around and GoProing at night because it doesn't work the best at night. But whatever, this is my opportunity. Anyways, previously, I think for me, religion was the biggest part. And biking actually follows a very similar vein in that you do it with your friends, and somehow that ability to connect to that part of you that is experiencing the moment is amplified. Like if you're singing a song or doing a religious practice with people beside you, and all together you're sharing that experience, somehow that really amplifies the benefits, the personal benefit of just enjoying that moment and not worrying about your planner, not worrying about your worrier, but just, like I said, just living in the moment. And religion for me, and everyone has their own ways. For me, though, it was a negative part of my life, because it really, for me, it really exaggerated my worry about the future, my regret about the past. Suddenly, every decision I made had eternal consequences, and I got wrapped up and balled up all the time in those thoughts. And you can make a clear argument that that's not what religion is about, and I'll accept that. I'm just saying, for me, that's where my brain went all the time, and I kind of eventually rarely enjoyed the moment and mostly thought about the dire consequences of eternity. Anyways, I don't want to get too far into that because we're talking about motorcycles. This world has motorcycles. But yeah, basically, like, if besides religion, I was real big into snowboarding, and that's a perfect example too. You catch that line. They say the zen of snowboarding is the line that existed before you took it, and you hit those jumps, and somehow it's a great tool for shutting off the two parts of your brain you don't like and letting you just enjoy a moment and enjoy being in the mountains. And pretty much everyone will have this experience in nature to some degree. I didn't find it as good as motorcycling, and I'll get into that later. But and the next is mixed martial arts, which I still I hold dear to my heart. It's still something that I love to do. And it's very similar. Everyone will tell you, like, when you're sparring and they close that gate, they're not worried about their bills, they're not worried about their their work, they're not worried about anything. You can't. You literally put yourself in a cage with another person with an intent to injure you, so that finally you get to turn off those parts of your psyche that basically interrupt you enjoying anything. They're used for survival, don't get me wrong, they have a use. Certainly the part of you that's planning is hopefully planning in such that allows you to experience the things you like to do as effectively as possible. And hopefully your worrier, or the part of you that's thinking about your past, is learning and thinking about, you know, the shitty mistakes you made and how to not make them in the future. So those two parts have a purpose, but literally their only purpose, in my opinion, is to better allow you to experience life, to experience a single moment. And MMA is so great for that. There's nothing quite like it. The competition between you and one other person, just focusing in. I tell people I like to play chess, as I'm sure a lot of you do. It's like playing 50 chess games a second, because it's so fast paced. You're feinting, you're bobbing, you're weaving, you know, you're eating some punches, and it's just awesome. The downside, of course, is injury, and but for me the biggest downside is just scheduling. Like I don't even know what time it is now, but I'm just leaving work, so if I had planned to do MMA tonight, my plans would have been spoiled by my work schedule, which started at 6 in the morning today, to give you an idea of how much of a life I have. But MMA is great for that, and honestly, I'm not saying any tool that lets you experience the moment is bad. They're all good. If it's skydiving, if it's adult coloring books. I don't know why those make you laugh. I totally get that that's great for some people. I can't do it. I'm the type of person I can't lay on the beach. You know, I always gotta be doing something. Like, just give me a snorkel. I'll go try and catch a moray eel, you know. True story. One time I caught one. Oh, this was gross. So the tide went out, and I grabbed her by the tail. The water was really shallow, and then I pinched. I don't know if you can see, but I pinched, and then the head part, or no, just above the tail, and it wriggled back between my pinch, because they're slippery, and in doing so, it brought up the contents of its stomach. Oh, it gives me the willies. Like this little dead fish kind of came out. Oh, here's our famous sculpture. Speaking of dead fish, look, it's somebody's face. So to escape my clutch, it regurgitated its food, and to be honest, I was so grossed out at that moment that I just let it go. And I felt so bad for making it do that, because of course I had just planned on agitating it. But anyways, moray eels, not part of our story tonight. Whether it's adult coloring books or whatever you choose to do, all the power to you. For me, motorcycling is just an excellent machine to trick my brain into forgetting the two parts I don't like, and letting me live in the part I do love. And why is that? Because you're focused on traffic, you're focused on your bike, you're focused on the road, focused on whether you left your signal light on. Check out my new signal lights. I put a Barco's feedback loop. See how I engineered it in such a way that I get notification if I leave my signal light on. Sorry, I spent too long at the office today. Anyways, for me, motorcycling is the best tool for that. Why? I don't have to get up at 6 in the morning and go load up my snowboard and pay $100 for a lift ticket and it's crowded and the weather sucks and I'm disappointed. And then I've had some pretty good falls on my snowboard, I'll tell you. Since we're still talking, I'll tell you one of them I broke my back, and another one, which is way funnier, is one time I hit my head so hard that I gave myself a concussion. But more than that, I kept asking the same 8 questions over and over and over and over and over. Now obviously I lost my memory of the time, but I remember just coming out of it like the next day, and my family was so sick and tired of answering my same repeated 8 questions that they wrote the answers on a sheet of paper. And I can just remember the weirdest feeling when I'm sitting on the couch and I say, why does my head hurt? And my brother says, look at the sheet. And I'm like, what sheet? The sheet in your hands. And I say, and then the sheet says, you know, your head hurts because you fell snowboarding with your friend Jeremy at the golf course. And the next sheet, my next question was, do I have to go to school? And then my brother says, look at the sheet. And then of course it says, no, you don't have to go to school tomorrow. And then I don't remember all the questions, but essentially I remember being so weirded out by by my family having this basically psychic sheet of paper that knew all the questions I was going to ask before they could ask them. Anyways, that's snowboarding. Motorcycling definitely presents a risk of injury, similar to snowboarding, but the injury is just less frequent and equally or more catastrophic potentially. But I enjoy that I can bike all day and not be sore at all, whereas pretty much if I'm snowboarding, I'm falling. Ooh, I don't think it's supposed to go this way. Following this idiot. But and then the other things I do, skateboarding, which is just, if I'm honest, is so bloody hard. Like the amount of work you got to do just to enjoy one moment, like that time you land a trick finally, you know. But for me it's like 10 hours of banging my elbow to get that one feeling of euphoria for finally landing the trick. And it's just not my thing. I'm too bony, I'm too tall and skinny, I don't know. Anyways, but motorcycling is just a perfect mix that allows me to strip away the parts I don't like, appreciate the world and nature, and I consider a lot of human creation as nature. My favorite artist of all time is an Instagrammer named at SpyFlyES, and she posted a picture of a whole bunch of graffiti. It's in like the back corner somewhere in Europe, and there's just been a ridiculous amount of tagging in this one little corner. And then she drew in bark to liken all this graffiti to tree bark, and I just totally agree with that humans are actually a part of nature, and a lot of what we do and make mimics and exemplifies nature, and a lot of commercialism and stuff gets in the way of that. But anyways, See that little smart car turning right and then turning right? That's nature. That is exactly how so many species act. Thank you, smart car, for proving my point. Anyways, motorcycling. Back to motorcycling, because that's probably what we all came here for. Gotta keep my speed down because it's dark and I don't want to put my visor down. But motorcycling allows me to experience my environment. Just because you're in the air, you're in the environment. It's just no comparison to being in a car. The hardship of being in the rain and the hardship of being in the heat with no air conditioning, for me is totally worth it, because I get to experience the landscape and experience the world as I drive through it. And I love hiking. That's one of my favorite things. But guess what? I just worked, you know, a 20-hour day. I can't go for a hike. I just can't. But what I have to do is drive home. And I'm just experiencing this city that I love on my drive home. And part of me is getting recharged, you know, for tomorrow, which is just going to be terrible, because even though I worked 20 hours, I still didn't get all my work done. But hey, planner, worrier, get out of here. This is us. Somehow motorcycling for me just really lets me connect to nature and my nature, which includes my city. And I'm gonna do something stupid here, but it kind of works out that somehow for me this bridge is in no way an architectural masterpiece. There's nothing about this that would spark any international beauty, any renown, nothing. But somehow I drive under it on my motorcycle, and I can connect to the guys who hammered those rivets. You know, the people who hauled the steel on a ship to this place, the designer who built this, obviously with economy in mind, but I can appreciate that. And just the decrepitness of this place, the age, the entropy, somehow that just resonates with me as a person when I'm on a motorcycle. And I get to experience life and enjoy a single moment, a single element of no importance. You know, trains go across this, cars go under it. It's very simple. It's resting at the base because we salt our roads like crazy. And, you know, some city welder put on these new skirts that probably hide some sort of degrading pile cap, you know, who wants to know? I wish it had graffiti to emphasize my point on that, but obviously there's no graffiti here. But somehow artists can capture that, and great photographers, and I'll post my favorite Instagrammer on this, who I already mentioned, with Bark, but they can capture that beauty and that resonance with our planet, with being human. A photographer can do that, and anyone can take a picture of a sunset that was gorgeous and say, look, a sunset. But for me, my favorite artists are the ones who take pictures of bridges like this, and I should turn on my bright, and can capture its beauty. And do I like snowboarding in the mountains? Oops, kickstand. Do I like snowboarding in the mountains? Do I love hiking in the mountains? Do I love motorbiking in the mountains? Yes. Do I love MMA and jiu-jitsu and Muay Thai, absolutely. Snowboarding, and there's no, I love so much of life, and I love people that love life. I don't care, I don't care what your hobby is, just love it. The only people I don't have time for are the ones that just seem to not actually love life and not have a hobby and don't have a passion. And motorcyclists, it's the same thing. There's tons of motorcyclists that basically have a brand and have an ideology and have, oh, let's go down this road. Who knows what we'll see. It's gonna be a little bit boring for a bit, but hey, the price was right on this. You know, they bug people about gear, and somehow I just can't connect with them on a level of that deep, that level of depth, of being inspired, of living in a moment, of being fulfilled by the simplest things. You know, I love that quote, the fastest bike in the world is the one you're riding. Some people, it's about the brand name of their bike, and they'll have giant chicken strips on this Italian beauty, and it just drives me crazy. Because there's nothing wrong with chicken strips, don't get me wrong. Everybody rides for different reasons, and there's no reason to push the limits. But for me, pushing those corners is just beautiful. It's art, and dragging your knee around a corner, and only on a racetrack. I've never dragged my knees on roads, but and a lot of the ridiculously fast racers I ride with are the same. They don't drag their knee on the road, just go to the track. But there is something so beautiful about this machine that is moving so fast and is just using explosions to propel, you know, 200 moving parts, and on the other side of that is this still and static road. And when you get your knee down and you're bridging that, you know, that is a beautiful, beautiful harmony, and there's few feelings like it. I don't know, one of my favorite things to one time when we were snowboarding, we built a jump that was about 20 feet back from a 30-foot cliff. So when you jumped, there wasn't a big kicker, but you were kind of barely over the ground, and then obviously the ground opened up as you went over the cliff. So like if you ripped, I just remember one time we could barely land anything because the cliff was so big that it's hard to actually land. And I hit the jump and I did a backflip, and as I was upside down, and just when I could see the snow was about, you know, 3 or 4 feet from my nose, and then just coming off that cliff and just everything opening up, and just having all of a sudden all the time in the world to just finish my rotation and land. And then I'll never forget, I don't know who this guy was, but we were kind of off in the backcountry, and some stranger was across the valley, and he just yelled, "Yo, that was dope!" You know, and for me, it's probably the best jump I've ever done and will ever do in my life, even though I've done more technical tricks. Just the size of the flip, for me, was great, and that moment for me was great, and I hope I never forget it, and I hope I never forget the first time dragging my knee. But I'll tell you, I'm very far from snow-covered backcountry, but I am in my city. I love headlights, massive lights. Sorry guys. Anyways, I am in my city, and I'm breathing the air, and my helmet is open, and you know, well, right now all is right with me, and that is why I love motorcycling. Thanks for listening.